It's an odd existence to live at the northwest angle, an isolated sliver of Minnesota that looks, from a map, like it doesn't belong in the United States. Paul Colson knows this better than most.
We are so far away from the rest of the United States that you don't have any of the things that people just normally take for granted. Can you imagine having to tell people that to have a passport to come over for supper for your house?
That's the reality of life here, day or night. In this border town in the United States, affectionately known as the Angle, nobody is talking about building a 30-foot wall. There's not even a border agent. Rather, all we have here is a shack with an iPad and a phone. Visitors use the iPad to submit their personal details and await approval to enter the United States. Surrounded on three sides by Canada, the Northwest Angle is a geographic oddity that owes its being to a mistake. It came about in the 1700s when the people who defined the boundary between Canada and the United States misidentified the source of the Mississippi River and the shape of Lake of the Woods. Hence, the Angle became secluded from the rest of the USA, accessible by road only from Manitoba. The community's been in the news recently because an anonymous petition suggested the region should be handed to Canada, but residents here think that's just a joke. It's a quiet life here, populated by anglers who frequent the handful of fishing lodges. Otherwise, there's a convenience store, a post office, a golf course, one-room schoolhouse, a church, and not much else.
It's good.
The Colsons don't leave often because they have to cross the international border twice to get to most places.
Well, we don't go to town very often as a rule, just because we don't want to, but at least once a week.
I haven't had a haircut in 20 years.
And a great place to raise a family because it's safe and it's away from the city. That has pros and cons, but we think of them all as pros.
George Ritter, the retired postmaster, liked the Angle better when it was even more isolated. The gravel roads were only added around the 70s, he says. Most people traveled by boat then.
Didn't have any electricity or running water or indoor plumbing or anything, so that was the worst part of it. But everybody was the same back then.
Ritter was around in the late 1990s when the township flirted with joining Canada. They threatened to secede from the U.S. when the fishers were told they could only keep the catch from Ontario waters if they stayed at Ontario lodgings. Residents pitched the outlandish stunt to get the American government to fight for them, and it worked. Over at the fishing lodge, the Colsons acknowledged life at the Angle isn't for everybody.
We might be a little bit crazy because this is the end of the road, and it seems like the end of the road attracts
It's a focal point for
crazy people. And I would describe some of the people up here as kind of crazy,
Yeah.
so we probably do fall into that category. We just don't think we're crazy.
Yeah.
Ian Fraze, CBC News, Northwest Angle.